Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We are going to start with this whole. Oh boy, I don't know. You know, I don't know what you'd call it because
political hack job.
Political hack job. You mean the things that Ben Carson says, or the way that they're picked up by the media,
or the way that they misinterpret what's said and then have to back off and correct and then change their headlines. So
I see.
Less problematic.
Okay. Well, that's it's interesting that you say that because we're talking, of course, about the Politico story that came out that kind of said that Ben Carson fabricated this West Point story, this famous West Point story that he's told for years and years and years and years, and that he made some stuff up. And obviously the response was pretty swift and pretty vociferous from the right and from the Carson campaign, saying that everything that Politico reported on was a lie itself. Deny. They made clarifications. They said a bunch of stuff. And so, Doc, I guess here's what the nuts and bolts of this are that Ben Carson has said for years that he was
decades.
Yes, that he was offered a full scholarship to attend West Point, obviously the American Military Academy in New York, at a banquet where he met and dined with General William Westmoreland, who we all know was the famous commander of the forces in Vietnam back in Memorial Day, 1969. That's what he said. And he said that he's repeated that forever. And Politico comes out and says that's none of that is really true. He wasn't offered a scholarship. He probably didn't meet Westmoreland around Memorial Day because Westmoreland wasn't in Detroit Memorial Day because Ben Carson was a highly decorated junior ROTC officer in high school in Detroit back in 1969, and that in any event there are no scholarships to West Point that are offered to anybody, and so he made this up, or at the very least he exaggerated it. And then Carson came out, and the rest of the right wing social media folks especially came out and defending him, saying that all of this is a political hack job and that Politico in fact made this whole thing up. So, Doc, I've laid it out. Go for it.
Well, first of all, I can't speak to whether he met Westmoreland or not. That's what he said. It would seem to me that if he was that highly decorated, that at some point he would have stumbled into the higher echelon of brass. Second thing is, the education is free. You don't get a scholarship. That's true. You sign a contract that says you will spend 4 years or 6 years, I can't remember the time, in any of the institutions, West Point, the Annapolis, wherever, or Air Force Academy, wherever you decide to go. Now, the process is this. First of all, you have to have a set of grades. I mean, you can't be getting C's and D's and get an invite. 2, you have to have a letter from at least one of your senators from your state.
Or a congressman.
3, they pretty much know who they want before you apply. And you do get a lot of these recruiters from these schools that will come and visit you and say, we would like to have you on board. We can get you in. Now, how do I know that process so well? I went through that very same process. I had several people come and talk to me about, when I was a teenager, about going to the military academy. I'm not unique in that. My brother Joe, who's listening, has stories about that. And I'm sure my brother Mike, if he ever listened, would be able to tell you similar stories. And the bottom line is, as I said, I don't want to go. But they still offered me that spot. Now, if you have to go through there...
Offered you a spot? That's not how it works. You just laid out how it works.
You lay out how it works, but they tell you right up front, we'll see that you're in. You have your letter. You have everything. We'll see that you're in. That's what they tell you. So they essentially pre-offer
that's
you
not
a
how,
spot.
but once again, that's not how my cousin went to West Point.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he got in.
Yeah.
And he did his application and sent a letter to his state senator there in Nebraska. It was either state senator or Congress. I can't remember which one it was. And was nominated and was then admitted to West. They picked him out of a pool of folks. There is no recruiting. West Point recruits athletes. That's it. They don't recruit students to come there because they don't have to. People apply to it. So when you say these military folks are holding a spot for you, that's inaccurate too, because the civilian control. So it's the civilian leadership that nominates people to go to West Point. They're not. There are a few selected spots that are like reserved for Medal of Honor winners and like the president's nominees that he delegates off to. But I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on what you're trying to say, what you're saying here.
And what I'm saying is, even though what you say is exactly accurate, there's a difference between what you are saying and what sometimes actually happens. If they want somebody bad enough, they will go out and they will send people to actively try to get you to apply. I never applied. And that's what Ben Carson is saying. His story is very similar to mine. And I'm sure it's very similar to what Joe did. These people will show up and say, we want you to apply. We have this thing for you. We have the letters. We can get you in. You don't have to worry about all the other stuff. Right? Now, there's a person in my high school class, and I'm not going to name her since I haven't asked, but she really tried hard to get into Annapolis. And I don't think she made it. She went and she did everything she was supposed to do. Now, what Lefty is saying is absolutely correct. That is absolutely how it works. However, they do have people because of whatever. I have no idea why these people wanted me in. I didn't want to go. I made that clear. And the last conversation I had with somebody trying to get me to apply, I simply told them, I love the service. I respect the people who go, but I don't want to go because I have different options. And that was really the end of any of that going on. I think I was 17 at the time. Now, I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if that's what they're supposed to be doing, but I know that exact same thing happened to me. I'm not lying about it. You know, if my dad, God, I mean, he's still living, but you know, if he could call in, he would tell you that he could corroborate a lot of what's going on with this. My brother Joe, I know has had his run-ins with that, and I was too young to remember any of that. But that is when I read that story that Ben Carson tells, that seems very similar to a story that I've had, and a story a guy that I went to college with named Jay. He had the very same thing, and he was from Texas.
See. I'm going to read to you what he has said. You know what? I don't need to. You've read what he said, but he says that he met Westmoreland and was offered. And he says it together. He says he links the two. He says it together. He met Westmoreland and was offered a full scholarship to go to the military, at least suggesting that somebody, whether either Westmoreland himself, which I don't even think you would think the general in charge of Vietnam would do anything like that to anybody, but two, that somebody in the military was saying, we're going to do all this for you, or we're going to give you this nomination or make this appointment, which nobody in the military is actually, no one in the military can do that. It has to come from Congress, the vice president, or the president. That's the only people that can make these nominations to West Point because of some legislation that's been on the books since like 1843, I think, is what I looked up anyway. But regardless of any of that, the biggest problem that I have with this whole thing, okay, because political candidates do this kind of stuff all the time.
Exaggeration?
Yes. Okay. I believe absolutely that at least from the kind of response that he's had to this, that Ben Carson and his supporters do not think that he's lying. And I have no idea what to call it. Exaggerating, whatever you want to say. It seems like that he's not telling what he's done is because especially for this run for the president, because his qualifications for president rely directly on this sort of, and I only say story because that's what we have to call it. I don't mean I don't mean a fabrication, right? The story
got about 30 seconds.
He's of an exceptional person and that's what qualifies him to be president, that he's bolstered that somehow, or he's told himself this thing so long for so many years that he believes down to his core that it actually happened the way that he's described it, not just in a book, but several speeches, several town hall things, and interviews that he's given over the years. Whether it's a lie at this point, you can't really say, but it doesn't seem to have the ring of absolute accuracy. And I'll finish this point after the break. So, Doc, take us out.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back right after this break. We're going to continue with the discussion about Dr. Ben Carson, whether he lied, exaggerated, and really what the impact is going to have on the presidential race. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back right after this.